So with the idea of the rider and a horse, the boy and a horse, that I referred in a previous video, and I'm going to put the link to that video in the description. So the idea of the rider or the boy and the horse, with the horse being the subconscious mind, that given the right instructions and given a proper handling, can bring about coincidences and accidents, whether happy or unhappy, lucky or unlucky, that can change the course of your life, with the idea of that story to illustrate how it may work from Ada Conde's own repertoire of little stories that she tells us about herself. I'll tell you the story about how Ada Conde was asked to help to find a very specific doctor and what happened. So Ada Conde tells us this story. At that time, she lived in Germany. She was a student in Germany. She didn't speak very good German. And she was actually wrapping up her semester there, and she was about to leave the country when one Sunday, she received a phone call. And that phone call was from an old mentor and an old friend whom she dearly treasured. And that friend said, my situation is very tragic. My wife has been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And that cancer of her lymph system is aggressive, and we urgently need a consultation from somebody who specializes in this rare form of cancer. And he asked Ada Conde, please help me. I know that in Germany, such treatment centers exist. So Ada Conde, upon receiving of this news, was in a state of emotion. She, number one, was shocked to hear about the situation with her friend's family. Number two, she felt squished by this responsibility that a friend whom she dearly treasures and respects and would do anything to help him selected her as somebody to whom he trusted the very life and health of his spouse. And in a state of emotion, she felt like she needed to do something, but she didn't know what. It was Sunday. She didn't know anything about German health system, how to find doctors, how to find a specific doctor, how to get a specific doctor to accept your case, etc., etc. So this is how she tells her story, and notice that the way that she handles this story is similar to the way that the boy and a horse story proceeds. So the way that she tells the story is that she felt that in a state of emotion, it was not the right time for her to try to gather more information. She said that she had a ritual, and that ritual is what she called the reset ritual. And the reset ritual consists of her going to make herself a cup of coffee, and then to calm herself down, to sit and read one of those philosophical books that tend to elevate her above the emotional state and put her in a state of peace and meditation or meditative experience. So she said that before she sat down to drink this coffee, she closed her eyes. And instead of doing a write out, so remember I told you about the practice of a write out, She did a very short version of a write out, which is in her mind. She created a write out of the event of her years later meeting with the friend who just called and him being very thankful that she was able to help him so quickly. And she was very happy and elated that his case was successful, that she was able to help. So she made this visual in her head as a starting point. And then she went to drink her coffee, make her coffee, and sit and read one of those books that she called reset books. It means it's a book that reminds her of how the universe is structured. It reminds her how our minds and conscious and subconscious minds work. She said that she was drinking her coffee. Suddenly, a thought popped into her mind that said, I would much rather drink my coffee somewhere else. And then an internal dialogue unfolded in which she asked herself, in response to that, her own statement, she said, where would you like to drink a coffee today? Where haven't we drank coffee before? And she answered herself, again, the internal dialogue, that, I always wanted to try this place. She names some kind of like a bus stop. And she said, there is a coffee shop in there that I always wanted to try. So she gets up, acting on this impulse intuition. She gets up, she picks up her book, the one that she was reading. She goes to her computer and she looks up the diagnosis that her friend emailed her just a few minutes before. She looks it up. It's already been translated into German for her. So she prints out that diagnosis so she could meditate on it or she could think about it while looking at it. She puts it into her book and she gets dressed and she heads to a bus station. She is a student, so she doesn't have a car, so she gets on a bus. She drives a certain amount of bus stops to that specific location, which she felt compelled to go to. She walks into the coffee shop in there. She sits down, she orders a coffee, and then she continues to read her book. After 20 or 30 minutes, her coffee has been finished. She feels peaceful. She feels relaxed. She feels at ease. She called it a light feeling. Ada Condi has this expression of feeling light. Feeling light means she feels like the weight of the problem are no longer on her shoulders. She feels peaceful, light, and at ease. In this state of mind, she decides that she's going to go ahead and jump into action, start researching the doctor, start researching the appointment system, start researching the treatments that could be available, and she puts on her jacket and she walks out of the coffee shop. Well, in between her and the coffee shop, there are several streets that she needs to pass. So she is walking from the coffee shop toward the crossing of two roads, and there is a traffic light in there, and the traffic light is turned red. So she looks around, and there are no cars coming. It's a Sunday, so there's actually very little traffic. So there is no cars coming. And she was just about to start crossing the street when she saw a man appear on the side, and he's also moving toward the same traffic stop. She feels, well, if nobody was watching, I would just simply cross the road even though it's a red light. But now that somebody is watching, I will just behave and I'm going to wait for the light to turn green. So she's standing in front of the traffic light, and the man stands next to her, and they both look at each other and they realize both that had there not been a witness, each one of them would already cross the light across the street.
But because they're both watching, they feel awkward, so they just keep standing there, and the light just won't turn on, just won't change. So finally the light changes, and they're relieved, start crossing the road. And then she realized that when they cross the road, they're actually going to the same bus stop. So they're starting to walk together on this empty street. And they both feel awkward because they kind of like almost met now and almost had this kind of like brief little mind conversation. And the man just asked her, do you know where that bus will finish going, or will it go to some kind of a street? And she said, oh, I do not know. I don't know this area very well. And the man asked her, are you a worker or you're a student? And she said, I'm a student. And he said, you have an accent. What's your accent from? She tells him. And then he asked her what she studies, and she tells him. And then they continue to go forward. And then she realized that he now asked her several questions. And it would probably be polite if she asked him at least something while they're walking, so they're not walking in awkward silence. So she asked him, how did you end up here? And he said, oh, I work nearby. And she asked him, whom do you work? Or where do you work? He said, I work at a hospital. I'm a doctor. And she stops. Like the lightning struck her. And she said, what kind of a doctor? And he said, oh, I'm a oncology doctor. And she just stood frozen. And then she quickly pulls out that paper that she printed out before she left home. And on that paper is the symptom, the proposed diagnosis, and she just sticks this paper into his face and tries to explain to him the problem that she has, or her friend has. The man looks at the paper, reads it, and he said, well, I do not treat those cases, but I know somebody who does. Long story short, this gentleman whom she accidentally met at this traffic light was able not only to connect her just with a doctor who knows how to treat that specific rare case of oncology, but also because she was already leaving Germany at that time. It was her last few days in Germany. He not only found her the correct colleague, but also he took upon himself to meet the family of her friend at the airport, arrange an interpreter, do formal process of getting them set up with appointments and getting the doctors who are top specialists in their field to pay special attention to this case. So Ada Conde says, what are the chances in this world that me sitting on my couch at home, drinking coffee, would decide that I need to go across the town on a bus to drink coffee in a coffee shop that I've never been to before? What are the chances? And she's trying to remember, how did it all happen? She said that a question popped into my mind. It says, I would rather drink my coffee somewhere else. I'm tired of drinking it at home. I want to drink it somewhere else. Where? I never drank coffee in a specific coffee shop. So had in her mind a different coffee shop name would pop up, she would never, ever, ever meet the only person who could quickly solve her problem. Moreover, let's look at the whole chain of events. She received a phone call. She is already packing her bags to leave Germany. She received a phone call for a problem that looks like it's going to take a while to solve. She's concerned, she's stressed.
She doesn't know how to handle it properly. She knows she needs to help, but she doesn't know what kind of resources she can truly provide. She prints out on a hinge, on some kind of a hinge, internal hinge, she prints out the description or the diagnosis. She picks up a book and she feels like going to a very specific coffee shop where she's never been before. She gets on the bus, she gets to the coffee shop. Nothing stops her, nothing interrupts her. She drinks coffee, she reads a book for about 20-25 minutes, and then she gets up. Why does she get up? Now think about it. Had Ada Conde got up from her place, paid for her coffee, and left just 1 minute too early, or 1 minute later than she did, chances of her meeting that specific doctor on that specific street would be close to 0.0000000. But she got up and she paid for her coffee. She got her jacket on. She headed to the door just at the moment for her to accidentally collide with this gentleman in front of a red light. Now notice, another thing is the behavior over the red light. The red light was exceptionally long. She was getting irritated. Why this light never changes? And because the light was so long, she and her, at this point, accidental friend had over a minute or two of awkward silence. And to fill this awkward silence with something, they started to ask themselves each other questions. And she said, when I approached the light, had the light been green, I would just simply cross the road and the gentleman would probably walk silently behind me and we never spoke. And I would have walked past just the only person in the entire Germany who actually quickly knows how to help me. So the behavior of both her, the gentleman, and look at the behavior of the gentleman, the doctor. He also was doing something. And at that specific moment, he decided that he's going to get up and go toward that specific light. And when he approached the light and he saw Ada Conde, he decided to stop. And he was the first one noticed that in this scenario, the initiative to start a conversation was actually with the gentleman. And he, being a polite gentleman, he started the conversation. And now the outcome of the story is this wonderful solution to a seemingly unresolvable problem for Ada Conde. So from that standpoint, looked at how many things had to happen just at the right moment for this conversation between her and a gentleman to happen. The bus, the coffee shop, her getting up and leaving at the right time, the behavior of the light, traffic light, the gentleman, the way that the gentleman decides to actually strike a conversation, all of that is what we would call a happy accident. But is it an accident at all? What would be the likelihood that the only person whom she needed to solve her problem would be at the same point in time and space as she? So she brings this conversation, or she brings this story as an example of the rider and the horse. Now notice that in this story, the Conde received a distressing phone call. She has no idea what to do. She has not the slightest clue of how even to approach the solution of this problem. She does the only thing that she knows how to do, or two things. Number one, instead of doing a long write out, she does a very quickly in her mind kind of think out of the desired outcome. She does a very quick version of the practice. And number two, she decides to sit down and do her reset activity, drink coffee and read a book until a question pops into her mind.
I don't want to drink coffee here. I want to drink coffee somewhere else. Well, I'm mistaken. She did three things correctly. She did the think out. She started to reset herself so she's not emotional and she's submerging herself into the zone or the flow. And then when a question popped into her mind that, hey, I don't want to drink the coffee here, let's drink coffee somewhere else. Instead of shutting down the idea of getting up, getting dressed, taking a bus to an unknown part of town just to drink coffee for 20 minutes and then coming back, instead of shutting it down as the stupidest idea in the world, she actually got up, dressed, and started to walk toward the bus station. And she followed her intuition into the coffee shop and then back to the street and then to the traffic light. So she was the rider who was stumbled by the process, but nevertheless, the horse knew exactly what to do. I'll leave you with pondering on how to take the image of the rider and a horse, the boy and a horse, and look at the situation with Adeconde finding the doctor and say, how could I use similar technique to solve seemingly unsolvable problems in my life? See you at the next video.